chapter number 12. The book of Exodus, chapter number 12. And I'm going to read this. This is why I believe none of the princes of this world knew it. This is the reason why I believe even Satan himself did not know it. Because had he known it, he would not have entered into Judas to betray Jesus. Had he known it as Lucifer, if he had any inkling that this was God was setting him up, subcontracting his activity to push Jesus into his place of purpose, into his place of prophetic destiny, and ultimately to fulfill Genesis chapter number 3, verses 15 and verse 21. Had the enemy known that this would have been the bruising of his head, he surely would not have entered into Judas. But how could he have known it? How could he have known it? When this happened, look at the book of Exodus chapter number 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. I want you to circle that. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. I want you to highlight all of that, but specifically highlight verse 5. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. Do you see that? A lamb without blemish. Now, this is so. In Genesis chapter number 3, God speaks prophetically concerning the seed of a woman bruising the serpent's head. We believe he's speaking directly to Satan himself. This is prophetic in Genesis chapter number 3. Are you with me? God discloses this. There is a shifting taking place in the eternal kingdom. What was once hidden is a mystery. Paul talks about this mystery. He uses that word repeatedly. This mystery that was hidden in God was this plan of redemption. In the bosom of God as Father was a son, and in the bosom of the Son is a bride. And I'm going to get to that. I've been dealing with that and for the last 2 years. This plan now is shifting. Highly classified information that God would not disclose has now been disclosed in Genesis chapter number 3. Now, Satan is now armed with information that he did not know before. God now unveils it. It's as if heaven was engorged with a secret, and now it is as if there's been an explosion. And now the matrix has opened. There is just a realigning, if you will, of everything. The word that God speaks in the garden resonates and reverberates in all of the dimensions and all of the spiritual realms to every principality and power. God literally disclosed that the seed of a woman shall bruise your head. First time ever. That information Satan could have obtained with that intelligence gathering. Could have taken it back and said, okay, now we need to know. Now we see what's going on. Now we know what what God is planning. He's planning on bruising our head. Well, how is he going to do this? Well, let's see what he does. He takes off the fig leaves, and I noticed that he sacrifices an animal that he creates, and he covers them with coats of skin. So there has to be now. So we can deduce now that it's going to happen through sacrifice. But look at and when you look at Exodus chapter number 12, God does something profound. God says that there must be a lamb without blemish. A lamb without blemish. So now we see how God does this. Now we see what makes God ingenious. Because I read to you, our text is Matthew chapter number 1, dealing with the genealogy of Jesus. And I know many people don't read this. You don't hear genealogies read on Sundays. You don't hear them preached. Genealogies that have been traditionally unpopular. for a myriad of reasons. Perhaps it's because they are filled with names of people we don't know, names that we can barely pronounce, if we can pronounce them at all. Genealogies in my Christian walk have always been boring reading. They didn't seem to be significant. But the more I walk with the Lord and the closer I get to him, and the more I am immersed in worship, immersed in his word and in his presence, I discovered that genealogy is critical to the working, to the meticulous, to the meticulous, scientific, precise working of God's eternal plan of redemption. Everything happens through genealogy, which is why 2 years ago I introduced this concept of this puzzle. The puzzle is huge. This wasn't just some creative way of me elaborating on the word. No, this to me is what this whole thing is about. The wording that you see in Holy Scriptures through the 66 books, to me, they are akin to a puzzle. 39 in the old, 27 in the new. It's akin to a puzzle, and every piece. This picture, it denotes exactly what it's going to be, how it begins and how it ends. And when we look at genealogy, I want you to look at it not just through the lens of our tradition that would see it as boring reading, but I want you to see this, not just names you cannot pronounce, but I want you to see every name inserted and inscribed in the genealogy of Jesus Christ and the ancestry of Christ, like puzzle pieces, like profound pieces to this puzzle, that every piece was critical. If there is one piece missing, then all of this is nullified. So every piece is critical. So why is that important? It's important because of this. When God sets in front of the entire nation of Israel and in front of every principality and power and even Satan himself, you understand that the Passover was yearly. This was a public knowledge. Every evil worker, every principality, every power, every ruler of the darkness of that age, every spiritual wicked force in heavenly places had an opportunity to watch every year the people of Israel take a lamb without blemish. So this is now public knowledge. But you know what God does, and I submit, God He hid the plan of redemption this way. He took a lamb without blemish, and he hid that lamb in a family filled with blemishes and spots. God took a lamb without blemish, and he hid that lamb in the midst of a family with blemishes and spots. And this begins our text. In verse number 3, and Judas begat Perez and Zerah of Tamar. I asked you earlier to highlight and to circle these specific verses, and I wanted you to circle expressly and explicitly the women that are there. Now, the Greek wording is going to be a little different. So when you see Tamar in verse 3, I want you to circle that. Skip to verse number 5. I want you to circle Rechab. And I want you to circle in verse 5, Ruth. Finally, in verse 6, I want you to circle the phrase, her that had been the wife of Uriah. These are key, and all of this is going to make sense in a moment. Look at verse 3. And Judas begat Perez and Zerah of Tamar. Now, it's imperative that you turn to the book of Genesis chapter number 38, because the book of Genesis chapter number 38, it will elaborate and actually explore what exactly took place in this area of Scripture, and why this is critical and key. Now, I want you to look at this in Genesis chapter number 38. You can turn there because, again, Tamar, this in verse number 3, first of all, what is she doing in the genealogy of Jesus? what is she doing in the genealogy of Jesus? Because according to Jewish tradition, genealogy does not have a women in them. So Matthew breaks with Jewish tradition, and he deliberately inserts women in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Why? I contend it is for a specific reason. He deliberately does this. He breaks and defies genealogy protocol and tradition because he wants you to see that this was a working of a plan. And on top of that, not only does he break with tradition, but it's who he inserts and inscribes in Holy Writ. Because the names and their associated background and their history does not speak of a Messiah that's holy, of an ancestry that would present a Messiah that is a lamb without blemish. There's nothing but scandal and salacious details littered all throughout the genealogy.